Good morning. It's wonderful to be with you today. It's an honor to be back here in Australia. One of my favorite sports legends in America is a guy named Don Shula. Don Shula was the coach of the Miami Dolphins years ago in the 1970s. He had an undefeated season, a tremendous success, very popular sports figure here in the United States of America. When Shula was the coach of the Miami Dolphins, he couldn't go anywhere in Miami without people going up to him, wanting his autograph, wanting to take his picture, want to talk about Sunday's football game. And Don Shula was relatively kind of a quiet guy and didn't really like all the fanfare. Didn't like all the autographs and the photographers and the media. So he convinced his wife that during the off season, they wanted to buy a little log cabin in upstate New Hampshire just to get away from all the people in Miami, get away from all the fans. So Mrs. Shula finds this little log cabin in this little town of New Hampshire, about a couple hundred people in this little town, small town. And the first day they were there, they realized there was an old-fashioned movie theater in this old town, small town in New Hampshire. So they decided to go to the movies. You know those old-fashioned movie theaters with one screen and old-fashioned popcorn machines? So they walked in, they bought their tickets, they bought their popcorn, and Mr. and Mrs. Shula walked into the movie theater. There was a handful of people in the movie theater. And as soon as the people saw Mr. and Mrs. Shula walk in the movie theater, everyone in the movie theater stood up and started clapping and giving him a standing ovation. And Shula walks down the aisle and whispers to his wife and says, "I can't even go in the middle of New Hampshire without people know who I am and recognizing me." And Shula's wife says, "Calm down, Don, just watch the movie." So Mr. Shula watched the movie. And the movie was a very moving, very compelling movie. So when he was walking out of the movie theater, he starts talking to some of the locals about how wonderful this movie was. And Mr. Shula realizes that these people he's talking to have absolutely no idea who he is. So he goes up to the old guy that he was sitting next to in the movie theater and says, "Sir, do you know who I am?" And the old guy said, "No, sir, I have absolutely no idea who you are." And Shula says, "Well, why did you give my wife and I a standing ovation when we walked in the movie theater?" And the old guy said, "Well, sir, there was only 8 people in the movie theater. We don't actually start the movie till the 10th person shows up. So all this very excited when he walked in." Oh, I love that story. And Shula does a better job telling that story. But that story truly is about humility. And in my opinion, leadership always starts with humility. I guarantee you I'm the first New York Times bestselling author that had a hard time graduating high school. I'm dyslexic, and I struggled academically. Ever since I was a little kid, I couldn't read. I had a hard time reading. And even when I went to high school and I watched my friends graduate high school, and my friends graduate high school magna cum laude and summa cum laude, and I graduated high school, thank God almighty, cum laude. I mean, I was barely graduated. Graduated with a 2.0 GPA, the bottom of my class, average grades, tough time in school. But something happened to me when I was 15 years old, back in 1985, in Suffern High School, upstate New York. Is I got involved with Rotary. And a guy named Tom France nominated me to join RYLA, Rotary Youth Leadership Academy. I never heard of Rotary, never heard of RYLA, but it was the first time I ever got picked for anything, so I went. It was an incredible week. I'll never forget Tom France. He was the district governor of Rotary at the time. He picked me up at my house, and he drove me to RYLA. And on the way there, I'm talking to this man, and he was such a warm, jolly man. He was a thin Santa Claus with rosy cheeks. He had red socks, this jolly man, and he spoke about how much he loves Rotary. "What is Rotary?" he said. He tells me words about humanitarian and service above self and global ambassadorship. And he's talking all about how Rotary's changed the world, and this week's going to be really big for you. So I got dropped off at this Rotary camp. I was 15 years old, the first time going away to a sleepover camp. It was an incredible experience. It was the first time in my high school career that people didn't see my dyslexia. They didn't know my grades. They didn't know my SAT. They didn't know how much I struggled academically. They just saw my leadership ability. It was an incredible week. And at the end of the week at RYLA, Tom France, the district governor, was the keynote speaker. And he spoke to the 125 RYLA participants. I'll never forget what he said. He said this 30 years ago, and I remember this like it was yesterday. He looked at the group of young people that just finished this week-long academy and said, "Boys and girls, there's 3 types of people in the world. 3 types of people, only 3 types of people. There's leaders, there's followers, and there's critics. Which one are you going to be?" And it was incredible that he posed the question. He asked us, do you want to be a leader? Because leadership is a choice. And at 15 years old, hearing this for the first time, it changed my heart. I decided that day on July 15th, 1985, at the graduating closing ceremonies of RILA, that I was going to choose to be a leader. Thanks. I went back to high school, a junior now, 16 years old, and a changed person. I saw leadership differently. I saw leadership as a choice. And I started getting involved in high school. I was involved with Boy Scouts, became an Eagle Scout, and ran for class president, gotten very involved in my church and nonprofit organizations in the community. It was a different lens I looked because of that experience with RILA. And when I graduated high school, my friends were all going to college, and I didn't get accepted to any prestigious school because of my grades. So about 3 months before I graduated high school, this international global leadership program called Up With People came to my high school my senior year and performed. I'm not sure how many people in this audience have seen or heard Up With People, but Up With People is this worldwide, oh, thank you, yes. Up With People is this worldwide global leadership organization with young people from all over the world. And they performed this musical show. And so I went to the show with my parents. It was an incredible experience walking into this auditorium, sitting right up front. And there was 150 young people on stage, 18 to 25 years old. And they were from all walks of life. Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Islamic, Hindu, black, white, red, brown, rich, poor, developing countries, developed countries, every walk of life. On stage together, singing rock and roll music about building relationships and changing the world and serving others. And I was 17 years old, never been on an airplane before, never been abroad, and seeing this worldwide show, it totally moved my heart. And after the show was over, I'll never forget this really cute girl, about 21 years old, from Sweden, comes to the front of the stage and says to the audience, if there's anyone in the audience between the ages of 18 and 25 that want to take a year off your life and travel all over the world with Up With People, please come to the front of the stage and talk to me after the show. Well, the show was over. I wanted nothing to do with traveling around the world with Up With People. I just wanted to meet the hot girl from Sweden. So I ran over there and I started talking to her. And the first question I asked her was, what kind of GPA do you need to get Up With People or SAT score? She said, we want to find young people that want to travel all over the world and change the world. And so after high school, instead of going to college, I traveled all over the world with Up With People, went abroad for the first time. I spent 9 years as a student and staff member on and off, traveling over 60 countries, living in hundreds of host families all over the world, changed my heart for service. When you go to Ethiopia and you see the poverty there, and then someone reaches in their pocket and holds out a $100 bill and says, half the country here lives on this $100 in 1 year. And you learn about the extreme poverty, it changes your heart. And traveling all over the world Up With People, meeting people that believed it differently, looked different than me, prayed differently, and embracing diversity and having friends that were different than me changed my heart for serving others. And after I traveled Up With People, I finally went to college. And after college, my first job out of college was back to work for Up With People. And after Up With People, I went to Japan. I had this opportunity to teach English with the JET program, the Japan Exchange and Teacher Program in Japan. It was an incredible experience working for the Nagano Olympics and living in Kisufukushima Machi, this small village in Japan. It was an incredible experience living in Japan for 2 years. And I lived in rural Japan. And with Up With People, we had interpreters, we had tour guides. It was very easy traveling around the world, but now I'm by myself living in this little village of Japan. I was the first American to live there, teaching English to the Olympic volunteers and the school children and the athletes of the Olympics. It was an incredible experience. But I'll never forget when I first got to Japan. Japan is a wonderful country. The people are so warm. But I lived in a very rural area, population of about 8,000 people. No one spoke English. There wasn't English anywhere. It was all kanji, katakana, hiragana. I couldn't understand everything. The first 2 weeks there were terribly difficult for the cultural exchange and the communicating. It was a difficult time. I really had a hard time the first month living there. I'll never forget, I go to my apartment, my first week living in Japan. And it was kind of dirty. There was kind of cobwebs and it needed to be dusted and clean. And so I went to the grocery store in town to find some scrubbing pads and some cleaning detergent to clean my apartment. Thank God the Ajax guy is an international figure because I got that guy right away. There was a bald Japanese guy with a little Ajax. I got that right away. I found the cleaning detergent. And I'm looking around for scrubbing pads. And I'm going aisle after aisle after aisle trying to find scrubbing pads so I can clean my apartment. So I find this big box that had a picture of a scrubbing pad, and it wasn't in English, it was in kanji, katakana. And so I bought the box, and I went to the checkout counter, and the lady at the checkout counter is looking at me like I'm crazy. And I realized that I must be the first American to ever shop in her little village shop. So I bought the scrubbing pads, and I bought the detergent, and I walk up to my apartment, and I get a big bucket of hot water, and I pour the Ajax in there, and I open up the scrubbing pads and find that I didn't buy scrubbing pads. I bought maxi pads. And now I know why the lady at the checkout counter is looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm buying maxi pads. I was so embarrassed to return those things. I washed my entire apartment with those maxi pads. It's incredible the amount of moisture those things absorb. And you can clean. It's unbelievable. Anyway, I have story after story after story after story of the first 2 or 3 months living in Kisa, Fukushima. The Japanese people were so wonderful, but I kept on flip-flopping and making all these cultural mistakes. But it was an incredible experience living there, and I loved the Japanese people. And at the end of my 2 years, I decided to do a little scuba diving trip, and I go to Bali, Indonesia to do some scuba diving. And while I was in Bali, Indonesia, I met this wonderful couple on a dive boat from Atlanta, Georgia, and they were Rotarians. I told them all about my experience being a RILA student 25 years before, and told them all about Tom France and the wonderful people in my life that shaped my heart for Rotary. And she said on the dive boat, there's this amazing scholarship called the Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship. You should apply. And so I did that. I went back to Japan. I applied for the Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship. Suffern, New York Rotary Club in upstate New York, and Tom France nominated me, and I was honored to be selected. I chose to go to Australia to get my MBA as a Rotary Scholar and lived in the Gold Coast and attended Bond University for a year and a half. When I got to Queensland, Australia, it was my first time in Australia and in Queensland, and I get to the airport, and the district governor of Surfers Paradise Rotary Club in Queensland, Australia, named Paul Gillette, reaches out his hand and gives me a handshake and gives me a hug. And the second I met him, I saw the goodness and the love in his eyes and the good person he was. And we became wonderful friends. I lived with Paul and his wife, Donna, for the first week that I was there before I moved into the dorms at Bond University. I built a wonderful friendship with Donna and Paul over the year, an incredible friendship. And I had an incredible experience traveling all over Australia, visiting Rotary clubs and visiting Broome and Perth and Adelaide and Darwin and Cairns and Sydney and Melbourne and staying with Rotary families. It was an incredible experience. And even went down to Tasmania, and with 2 Rotarians, we took a sailboat and traveled all around Tasmania for 2 weeks. It was an incredible experience. Changed my heart. And after I finished the Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship, I went back to the U.S. and started my career. But when I look back at my 30 years since I was a RILA student back in 1985, I realized that Rotary changed my heart. Rotary changed my life. Rotary helped define my values of service above self and leadership and humility. And people like Tom France and Paul Gillette loved me. And because they were Rotarians, there was an automatic bond when I first met them. You know, both Paul Gillette and Tom France, legends in my life, the 2 greatest Rotarians that ever lived, both have died in the past 6 years. And before Tom France died, I called him up. I was the keynote speaker for the Rotary Conference in America in Denver, Colorado, and I asked him to come. And I asked him to be my guest. I didn't tell him I was the keynote speaker. And I flew him and his wife from New York to Denver. We took him to dinner, and I wanted to honor him. He was a fragile old man, but this man changed my life. And at the Rotary Conference, he sat right in the front row. And I shared with 350 Rotarians the story that I shared with you, that when I went to RILA 30 years before, this man drove me there and told me about leadership. And he challenged me that there was 3 types of people in the world: leaders, followers, and critics. And because this man, Tom France, my life was changed. And this guy with big glowing smile on his face next to his wife, I asked Tom to stand up and come on stage. And he and his wife got a standing ovation with 300 Rotarians. And I just watched Tom just cry, because 35 years of service to Rotary, his whole life was Rotary, and he finally was honored, and he changed a young boy's heart, and I was able to honor him. Thanks. Thank you. When President Burton wrote me a letter and told me he read my book and he's very moved by my success of my story and that I was a Rotary scholar and an ambassador and a RILA student, he asked me to come speak today. And of course I accepted, but the first thing I thought of was my host mom in the Gold Coast of Australia, Donna Gillette, because her and Paul, Rotarians, were the ones that brought me in and were wonderful friends. And I didn't get a chance to say goodbye to Paul because he died of cancer 6 years ago. But I'm going to say goodbye to him right now because I invited Donna to fly from the Gold Coast, and she's here. And she's sitting over here, and I want to get a stand ovation for her and for Paul for all the things that they've done for Rotary and to honor all the Rotarians that are not alive with us today. Thank you. Thanks, Donna. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. When I got picked up yesterday at the airport, Brian King, a wonderful Rotarian and a staff at corporate headquarters and in charge of alumni relations. And I was talking about Rotary. He's been working for Rotary for 12 years. Why do you work for Rotary? He says, Rotary's incredible. It's all about relationships, he said. And I said, you're right. What I realized that Rotary is not just an international organization. Paul Harris didn't found this organization over 100 years ago. We don't have 1.2 million members in 200 countries and geographic regions to build a worldwide organization. He built a movement of people that want to build genuine, heartfelt, real serving relationships with each other. Rotary is working. RILA, Rotary Youth Leadership Academy, is working. The Rotary Ambassadorial Scholarship is working. Interact is working. Rotary Act is working. I was a participant in all those organizations, and it changed my life. And I'm here to say on stage, thank you. Thank you for teaching me the values of Rotary at a young age. And I promise I'm going to spend the rest of my life living them. Thank you so much, and God bless. Thank you. Thank you.